The story of the Knights Templar is one that has fascinated historians, writers, and dreamers for centuries. It is a tale wrapped in mystery, glory, betrayal, and tragedy, filled with daring battles, unimaginable riches, sacred vows, and dark rumors that still echo into our own time. Imagine, if you will, a brotherhood of warrior monks, sworn to poverty, chastity, and obedience, yet feared on the battlefield and envied by kings. Their name alone carried weight across Europe and the Holy Land, and their red cross on a white mantle became one of the most powerful symbols of faith and war. But who were the Knights Templar, and how did they rise from humble beginnings to become one of the most powerful and mysterious orders in human history, only to fall in flames and whispers of curses that would last for generations? It all begins in the aftermath of the First Crusade in the early 12th century. Christian armies had fought their way into the Holy Land, capturing Jerusalem in 1099. Pilgrims from across Europe began to travel to the Holy City, hoping to walk in the footsteps of Christ and pray at sacred sites. But the road to Jerusalem was dangerous. Bandits and hostile forces prowled the routes, and many pilgrims were robbed, enslaved, or killed. Into this world stepped a small band of knights, led by a French nobleman named Hugues de Payan. Their mission was both simple and audacious: to protect pilgrims making their way to the Holy Land. In 1119, these 9 knights formed what they called the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, or as they would become known to history, the Knights Templar. At first, they were little more than a ragged band of warriors, living modestly and gaining little attention. They took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience, living much like monks, but devoting themselves not to prayer alone, but also to the sword. Their headquarters was given to them in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount, in a building thought to be part of the ruins of Solomon's Temple. This location gave them their famous name, the Templars. It was a symbolic home, a place that connected them to both biblical history and the heart of Christian faith. Yet for years they struggled to gain recognition, and many dismissed them as little more than eccentric zealots. But then came the year 1129, when the Templars received formal approval from the Church at the Council of Troyes. With the support of powerful clergy such as Bernard of Clairvaux, who wrote passionately in their defense, the Templars gained legitimacy and prestige. Bernard even described them as a new type of knighthood, warriors who fought not for worldly glory, but for God. Suddenly, nobles across Europe began to see the Templars not as wandering knights, but as holy warriors serving a divine mission. Donations of land, money, and recruits began to pour in. In just a few decades, the order expanded across Europe and the Middle East, growing in wealth, influence, and power. Their distinct image became iconic. Templars wore white mantles adorned with a simple red cross, a symbol of martyrdom and sacrifice. They lived under a strict code of discipline. They ate together, slept in shared quarters, and were forbidden from holding personal wealth. Everything they owned belonged to the order. Yet while they lived modestly as individuals, the order as a whole became incredibly wealthy. They were not just fighters, they became skilled administrators, builders, and perhaps most famously, financiers. Pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land could deposit money with the Templars in Europe, receive a coded letter of credit, and then withdraw funds once they arrived in Jerusalem. In this way, the Templars created one of the earliest forms of international banking. They financed kings, built fortresses, and managed vast estates. Their financial acumen gave them enormous influence, but it also planted the seeds of envy and resentment that would one day lead to their downfall. On the battlefield, the Templars became legendary. They were often placed at the front lines of crusader armies, and their reputation for courage and ferocity struck fear into their enemies. They lived and died by their vows, forbidden to retreat unless hopelessly outnumbered. Chronicles of the Crusades are filled with accounts of Templar bravery and sacrifice, from the defense of castles to the bloody fields of battle against Muslim forces. They fought in some of the most significant clashes of the Crusades, and their very presence was said to bolster the morale of Christian armies. But for all their success, the tides of history were against them. The Crusader states established in the Holy Land were fragile and constantly under threat. Over time, Muslim leaders such as Saladin united their forces, reclaiming lost lands and eventually retaking Jerusalem in 1187. The Templars fought valiantly, but they could not stop the slow collapse of Christian power in the region. Still, the order endured, shifting its focus to defending remaining strongholds and expanding its operations in Europe. Yet with each lost battle and each retreat, their original purpose to defend Christian pilgrims in the Holy Land grew weaker. And without that purpose, the Templars became increasingly vulnerable to suspicion. By the early 14th century, the Knights Templar were at the height of their wealth and influence, yet paradoxically, their mission was fading. They owned estates across Europe, commanded fleets of ships, and served as bankers to kings and nobles. One king in particular, Philip IV of France, found himself deeply in debt to the order. Philip was ambitious, ruthless, and always in need of money. To him, the Templars were both a source of resentment and a tempting prize. And so, he hatched a plan that would destroy them forever. On Friday, October 13th, 1307, under Philip's orders, the Templars across France were suddenly arrested. The charges were shocking and scandalous: heresy, idolatry, blasphemy, even devil worship. The Templars were accused of spitting on the cross during secret initiation rituals, worshipping a mysterious idol known as Baphomet, and engaging in forbidden practices. These accusations were almost certainly false, fabricated by Philip to justify his actions. But in an age when fear of heresy was powerful, they stuck. Under torture, many Templars confessed to whatever their captors demanded, though later they recanted. Still, the damage was done. Pope Clement V, pressured by Philip, reluctantly dissolved the order in 1312. Its lands were seized, its members disbanded, and its treasures, many of which mysteriously disappeared, were claimed by the crown. The final blow came in 1314, when Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Templars, was burned alive in Paris. As the flames consumed him, chroniclers say he proclaimed his innocence and cursed both the Pope and the King, summoning them to answer before God within a year. Incredibly, both Philip IV and Clement V died within that time, fueling legends of a Templar curse. The order was gone, but its story was far from over. For centuries, the memory of the Templars has lingered, wrapped in myth and conspiracy. Their supposed treasures, their hidden knowledge, their mysterious rituals, all have inspired endless speculation. Some claim the Templars discovered the Holy Grail, or the Ark of the Covenant in Jerusalem and spirited them away. Others believe that secret societies, such as the Freemasons, inherited their legacy. From novels and films to whispers of hidden maps and buried treasure, the Templars live on in legend as much as in history. But beyond the myths, the real story of the Templars is already extraordinary. They were warriors who became monks, monks who became bankers, and bankers who became scapegoats of kings. They rose from obscurity to dominate the medieval world, only to be betrayed and destroyed. Yet their symbol, the red cross on white, remains one of the most enduring emblems of faith and sacrifice. The Templars remind us of the fragile line between devotion and ambition, between faith and power, and between glory and ruin. Even now, more than 700 years after their fall, the Knights Templar remain one of the most captivating mysteries of history. Were they simply pious warriors, or did they hold secrets too dangerous to be allowed to live? Were they victims of greed and politics, or the keepers of knowledge that could have changed the world? Perhaps we will never know the full truth. But one thing is certain: their story is not forgotten. It lives on, echoing through time, in books, in legends, and in the imagination of all who hear the name. The Knights Templar.